Hey, you're tuned in to Tech Talk with VLink, an award-winning podcast brought to you by VLink Inc. In each episode, host Tracy Gardner sits down and talks trending tech with global business and tech executives.
Welcome to Tech Talk with VLink, where we dive deep into the ideas shaping the future of tech, business, and leadership. I'm your host, Tracy Gardner, and today's episode is one that will challenge how you think about something we all rely on in business, our strategic roadmaps. Our guest is Shantanu Chakravarty, an experienced technology executive and educator with over 20 years of expertise in business enablement and digital transformation across industries such as banking, technology, manufacturing, real estate, and much more. He specializes in IT project management, business analysis, artificial intelligence, Lean Six Sigma, IT service management, and change management. Currently the Global VP of Business Applications at Avison Young, Shantanu oversees enterprise platforms and leads strategic PMO initiatives to align technology with business goals. Welcome, Shantanu. Tell us that it's so good to have you here.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm honestly honored. That was an amazing introduction.
Oh, well, it's great to have you, Shantanu. We were talking about, we have a little bit of a twist today. You're here to tell us, we're going to talk about roadmaps. And, we know that most of them are carefully crafted with stakeholder approval plans and all of that. But you're saying that we might want to rethink those because sometimes they could be lying to us. Let's unpack that.
That's a very good question and topic to talk about. Roadmaps are like those cool buzzwords. We all use it. I use it. You
Yeah.
use it. But it's really quite simple. It doesn't need to be a buzzword. It's something we do day in and day out, and we should just practice what we preach when we take the roadmaps. And I will elaborate on that. Take the roadmaps that we do every day to our workplace. So
Hmm.
let's look at a Google map and a Google roadmap and how we use that. We use Google when we are traveling to a destination we are not sure about how to get to.
All the time.
There you go. Actually, more and more because now our memory is failing us. Now I remember one
Right.
200 phone numbers. I don't think I know my wife's phone number anymore.
Right.
So I have to look at the address book. So let's look at Google Maps, going back to the topic. So we put in an origin, which is our starting point, a destination where we want to get to, and then Google throws out all these options. You want to walk, you want to crawl, you want to take the car, you want to take the bus, you want to take the train, and all of these. You want to take the freeway, you want to take a toll route, you want to go inside roads, and all. And after all those questions, Google still gives us three options. You can
Yeah.
go this way, it'll take you 2 hours. You can go this way, it'll take an hour and 40 minutes, and you can go this way. So there's all, Google has mastered this. Now let's go back and flip to our day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And let's look at how we use and how we build our roadmaps and why Tracy mentioned about how sometimes roadmaps don't do justice to what we're trying to achieve.
They don't.
So in an organization, in an ideal world, we should start with an organization goal, a mission statement, goal statement, what we want to do in the next 3 years or 5 years. And then we should be candid to recognize and accept and understand where we are now. That's, I would say, our origin, considering the Google Maps analogy, or our
Sure.
current state.
Yeah. And do you want to finish your thought, or should I ask you another question? Because I've got one
No,
at the top of.
Tracy, this is open. Please feel free to ask.
So, Shantanu, why do you think roadmaps often fail to reflect the true state of our business progress or priorities? I know that sometimes we lose our way. Like you said, Google, we've got 10,000 different ways to go. Why do you
Yeah.
think that is?
Now, see, now that you understand that there's a starting point and current state and desired state, all those textbook terminology, but in the end, that's your organization roadmap. That cascades down to a department roadmap, and I'm simplifying, oversimplifying it. That cascades down, let's say in IT, to an application roadmap or a program roadmap. A is if the communications have not been good, and if the goals are not understood by someone at an application level or at a project level, as they encounter challenges or constraints, and the constraints are not negative. Sometimes there could be a new advancement in technology which makes it easier to do something that took longer to do. Sometimes price may have changed. I mean, there's multiple factors. People at a tactical level, like at a application or a project level, will make decisions that serve their project or application the best. But just like the goal cascaded down to the application, if that doesn't cascade up and either get corrected because the decision was wrong and it doesn't align with the corporate goals, or if the corporate goals are not modified so that now all sectors are in the same page, you're going to have a disconnected situation.
That definitely makes sense. Now, Shantanu, many leaders believe that roadmaps provide clarity and alignment, but often it seems like the further we go, the more things deviate. Where do roadmaps most often go off the rails in enterprise environments, do you think?
The most common mistake, or I won't even call it a mistake, it's everything is time driven. So when you create a roadmap, you've got a finite amount of time to create the roadmap because you don't want it, there's a very funny statement that I heard about. It's called analysis paralysis. You do analysis to the nth degree that you're paralyzed. You do nothing because you're analyzing so much. So sometimes you draw a compromise and you'll come up or you'll build your roadmap and you've missed certain factors that you haven't taken some significant contributors into the mix. And I'll give you an example of mistakes that people make. A biggest one is human resources, right? People
Yeah.
assume this is my roadmap and I'm going to deliver. Do I have the skill set? Maybe not. So similar to the human resources, there are many factors that cannot, and I understand at the top level, cannot be incorporated in building the roadmap. But when you come down, what's key is communication, communication, communication that supports change management. Because any roadmap is changing the way we did things yesterday and dictates how we are going to do things for the next 3 to 5 years. So
So
it's that.
true. Yeah, you just can't communicate enough. I think that is the key to everything, roadmaps and in all business. Shantanu, what do you think it looks like when teams follow a roadmap too rigidly? You mentioned analysis paralysis.
Yes. Now this one is kind of the opposite. I'm just going to digress for a second and say there was a time when there was, the decision makers and the order takers. And things have changed now. There's a little bit of collaboration thanks to social media, the internet, the chat GPT, and everything else. Most people are more informed. So it is really critical to engage people and to make them understand why they're doing things. Now, you mentioned this thing about following it too rigidly. That is a typical example of an order taking situation where someone's given a roadmap to an execution or a tactical team. And those people have taken that as gospel and doesn't matter if they're drowning in water, they will continue down that path.
Oh
But
my
now
goodness.
think about this COVID pandemic hits. What about the tariffs? You got to change. When COVID hit, I still remember everybody had their hands full and projects were running, the way they're supposed to run. And then there came a mandate that in IT that you got to beef up your security, you got to beef up your VPN, and you got to beef up your self-service. And a lot of IT leaders said, yeah, yeah, we know, but my hands are full. What they didn't realize is they were not being asked for, gold plating or icing on the cake. Without these three things, security, VPN, and self-service, you could not have a functional remote workforce. And
Oh,
guess what? In COVID, you needed that.
you did. Exactly. Well, have you ever had to abandon or rewrite a roadmap midstream? And what might have triggered that? Maybe COVID, as you said. That would have definitely derailed something.
We're definitely beating COVID to that, which is not a bad thing. But yes, it's a great question, firstly. It doesn't happen too often, rewriting a roadmap. Typically, what you see is you would modify the path, just like Google, right? You would go to an alternate path. You won't completely change your roadmap by changing the source or the destination. But sometimes radical changes are necessary.
Yeah.
And you mentioned COVID, yes. And guess what? What COVID did in terms of roadmap is there were retail stores. Actually, I worked in my previous employment with some retail stores that, even though expansion was on their roadmap, they changed their focus, used the funds in expansion to move to e-commerce. And COVID was responsible largely for that change. AI is another one.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good example. I mean, that is a really good example, to switch because the ability to adapt is really the definition of success. Um, if now, Shantanu, would you say if traditional road mapping creates false confidences, what would be a better approach than the traditional? If you think that it creates false confidences, maybe you don't.
That's a that's an interesting take on it. So I agree with you, Tracy, 100% that traditional road mapping creates false confidence. But just to be politically correct here, so I'm not offending anybody, a professional road mapper. Now you have all these data scientists and new roles. I'm sure soon we'll have a professional data mapper. But when that happens, I don't want to hurt that person, and I rather than saying that it causes false confidence, is it sometimes may take you down the wrong path and give you the appearance that I have a roadmap, and if I meet these milestones, I will reach my goal.
Yeah.
There is no way I'll miss the goal. That's the false confidence you're talking about. Am I correct, Tracy?
Yeah, yeah, right. That's exactly right. Yeah. So what do you think's a better approach?
I think well, I would call it the only approach. I mean, there can be variations to that, but the better approach or the only approach that is has more possibility of succeeding is if you have a roadmap that cascades down from the top level to the bottom level. And a roadmap is essentially like a project, and you have like a steering group that makes sure that these objectives are met, that meet regularly, that meet with and there are individual groups feeding in data to that group, and that group measures and sees that we need course correction here, or we need to change our budget here, or we need to increase timelines or make changes. Then that's a meaningful, and I'm going to use this word, realistic roadmap, because a roadmap, it should not be accepted like a firm guideline. It's a guideline, actually, a firm schedule on how to deliver the milestones.
Again, it has to go, we have to be agile and flexible, I think. That's one of the things I think is really important when it comes to roadmaps. Like you said, if tariffs come into play, let's adjust for that. We have to plan for that. The steering committee needs to look at that, and so it's important. Um, Shantanu, how important is it to communicate the roadmap effectively across the organization, and how do you make it accessible to everyone, not just leaders like yourself?
So it is, this was communications we talked about, right? But again, we in today's day and age, an average person gets about 60 emails a day.
Hmm.
It's really important for people who are communicating. So your question basically talks about how do we, keep everybody engaged, and how do you keep everybody excited and motivated to help the roadmap succeed? Yes, communication is a big tool, but it is important to understand method of communication. Grapevine, which used to be considered negative, is an extremely positive communication methodology. Having social media like sites for internal communications is very critical. Email is good, but email is more communication that people want to archive and go back to later.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
multiple modes of communication is what I would recommend.
That's a great answer. What do you think the signs, Shantanu, that a roadmap is maybe overcommitting resources, and how do you mitigate that risk?
Uh, if I can elaborate on this, so you're probably looking at, when you say overcommitting resources, you're talking about not just the human beings, but you're also
Right.
talking about money and time.
Exactly.
And, okay. So with that, yes, sometimes the roadmap is overcommitting resources, and if it is a good roadmap, it will not commit over resources because the roadmap factors time, cost, and people into it. But yes, what are the signs that the roadmap is overcommitting resources? That's one of the symptoms to tell you that this is a good moment to go back to your roadmap and course correct that we are talking about earlier. So when you build a roadmap, you build the ability to fix it and the ability to monitor overcommitting resources is will help you to mitigate that risk. And I wish I could give you a single answer on how to mitigate the risk or do this, but every situation is different.
Absolutely.
But every
Absolutely.
situation should keep in mind that when you make your mitigation plans, you cannot lose sight of the original goal that caused you to create the roadmap to begin with.
Right. Exactly. How do you measure the success of a roadmap? What metrics do you use, Shantanu, that you could give us tips on how to track to ensure it's delivering value?
So this is interesting. I like your line of questioning because every question kind of supplements the previous one. So yes, so we just spoke about metrics and human resource allocations as in timesheets was one of the metrics. What is key in order to have a successful roadmap? There will be hundreds of metrics. How much was spent, how many POs came in implementing something, how many people were engaged, what their timesheets are. You will have, holidays and sick leaves and vacations, all this data coming in.
Sure.
What's key is to build KPIs, key performance indicators in the beginning, because your goal is not going to change. So if you build the KPIs with these metrics, if, for example, we talked about vacations, if more than 20% of the staff or the resources needed to do a task are on vacation, you know that you need to have a mitigation strategy right there.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
it those KPIs, like 20% of this and things like that.
Yeah, that excellent. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That is a good way to measure. And again, we go back to being flexible. So, Shantanu, we're almost out of time, but I want to ask you one last question. For CIOs, CTOs, and other tech leaders that might be listening, what mindset shift is required to build strategies that can evolve and adapt?
I just want to mention two things where which I think you will see in major websites without naming anyone. But most roadmaps, plans fail because of lack of top leadership support. We're talking in this question to the CIOs and CTOs. I would strongly recommend that leaders at the C level, they need to work with their teams and come up with strategies or roadmaps and something. But once that is there, their goal is to empower their people.
Right.
Their goal should be to make sure that the right people are there to execute this and not babysit or micromanage, but provide that support, provide the ability for people to walk up to the CIO and say, I have this constraint, can you help me with it? And the CIO should be able to help the person with that constraint. That's the role they have to take on. Many CIOs and CTOs have grown up the ranks, and the challenge they face is they are just dying to jump in, get their hand help.
They're doers.
Yes, got it. They
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, listening is key, absolutely, and being flexible that way. Well, Shantanu, any additional thoughts? We're here at the end. I've enjoyed talking to you about roadmaps and sharing your insights. That sometimes these roadmaps can mislead us, but we definitely want to make them more transparent and effective. Anything you want to add before we go?
Just one line I would like to go back to where we started with Google Maps and remind the CIOs and CTOs we've all been in a car with the perfect roadmap, time, and everything's perfect. And then we reach a spot where we get a message saying there's an accident up ahead, but there's an alternate route. Uh, Many people will say, take the alternate route. Many people will say, don't take the alternate route. As a CIO and CTO, I would strongly encourage assess,
Mm,
make,
look at it.
make the right decision.
Yeah.
But be willing to make the change, be flexible. I think you and I have used the word flexible multiple times today.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe that, that's definitely a theme, a recurring theme here, because I think you have to be, as you've said. Well, it's been so enjoyable, Shantanu, and for more conversations like this. Until next time, build smaller, adapt faster, and be more flexible, right, Shantanu?
Absolutely. Thank you, Tracy.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Tech Talk with VLink by VLink Inc., headquartered in Connecticut. We'll see you in the next one.